Your Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, welcome to this Monday evening episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. And of course, thank you all so much for making this your first listen of the day. Freshly shaven, if those that are watching on YouTube, the beard just had to go. I have the beautiful Party at the Point shirt from 2016. It somehow still fits, even though that shirt is from 5 years ago. I guess I just really haven't grown too much in height, I think, at this point, or weight-wise, I guess, as well. One thing before we get into the meat of our show. So I posted this on the personal Twitter. I'm going to retweet it onto the show's Twitter. So overall, for the Locked On NHL channel, it increased 135% in listens and views from last year. And the Locked On Penguins podcast was one of the 5 shows with the largest growth rate from 2020 to 2021. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you all so much for continually listening and supporting this podcast. I don't care if you have listened to one episode, 2 episodes, every episode each week, or every episode known to existence with this podcast. Every listen means the absolute world to me, just because I love talking about this team on an everyday basis, and I love sharing my opinions and just my takes and bringing high-profile guests on and talking to them about this team and everything else about the Pittsburgh Penguins. So again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for continuing to support this show, sending in the reviews and all that. I take those really seriously. Honestly, it's pretty personal to me when I read them, just because I like to incorporate some new stuff into the show from time to time. So again, I really do appreciate everyone listening to the show, and just for how it's grown from last year to this year. I want to trump that from 2021 to 2022, and I know that I'm going to do it. So wanted to start off the show just with a big thank you to you all for continuing to support this podcast as we transition into 2022. That'll be the 4th year overall that I've been doing this. It's season 3 right now, but I started this show in late 2019. So we're basically at the 3rd year at this point that I've been doing this, and it's crazy that the show has grown so much throughout that time. But overall, let's make it 7. Your Pittsburgh Penguins have now won 7 in a row, the hottest team in hockey. And, my biggest takeaway from the game on Sunday night against New Jersey, so what if they played like crap? I've seen a lot of takes on a lot of different places today, scrolling the internet. And it's not just social media, it's, some reporter stories that, people just, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for here? Harping mainly on the doom and gloom of how bad they played. Good teams are allowed to play like crap on nights. This was probably the worst game they've played since the Calgary one about 2 weeks ago. That's going to happen. It's a late December game against the New Jersey Devils, a team that has been pretty bad these last few weeks. I mean, they've lost, what is it now, 11 out of their last 12 games. They're well out of playoff positioning at this point. They're a little banged up, especially in goal. Heischer was out for that game as well. But, I mean, this is still a team that has some pretty decent talent, although not that good depth. But sometimes it's hard to wake up for that kind of game. I mean, and this is also a Devils team. They always play the Penguins tough. I mean, this has been going back the last several years, when John Hines was there before he got fired. I mean, for whatever reason, this is a team that they know how to play against in Pittsburgh. And I thought the Penguins were pretty fortunate to win that game last night. And I guess overall, it was a bit of a slog. I mean, the Devils played boring, but also the Penguins played boring. And, for a lot of that game, especially those first 2 periods, I did not think the Penguins had their legs. But overall, at the end of the day, a win is a win. This was the kind of game, at least to me, with this takeaway, you needed to find a way to get 2 points and get the hell out. And that's exactly what the Penguins did. They found that way. They got that nice goal from Danton Heinen. That's now 9 goals from him on the year, which is just incredible at this point. Teddy Blueger gets the Penguins' first shorthanded goal of the season. That was his 9th of the season as well, if I'm not mistaken. And then Mike Matheson was able to score that third goal to restore that 2-goal lead, at least for a couple minutes before Mike Matheson again did a really stupid penalty. So he giveth and then he taketh away. That's the Mike Matheson experience for everyone. But if you go to natural stat trick, it is interesting because if you look at the full report from here, I mean, Pittsburgh dominated in shot attempts, 61% of those at 5v5, 60% of the scoring chance to score. They led in high danger at 58.3%. Expected goals for 1.89 for the Penguins, 0.95 for the Devils, and then Pittsburgh also had 66.6% of the total expected goals for. And a lot of that had to do with the third period. And, that was the biggest period of the game. I mean, it's always the biggest period of any game, but especially last night where the Penguins did not have their legs through those first 40 minutes, you wanted them to show up in that third, and they definitely did that. They played some really nice lockdown defense for the most part. The only goal the Devils scored was on another deflection on the power play. That was the Penguins' first power play goal given up in over a month. The streak had almost gotten to 40. They were a little over 10 kills away from breaking the all-time streak for most consecutive penalties killed. There was a stat last night that I saw going in that they were 16 away. They killed off a couple, got it down to around 13 to 14, and then they gave up that goal. So if they were able to do this for the next week or two, they probably would have had the NHL record for the most consecutive penalty kills in NHL history. They were not able to do that, but still, it took a really nice deflection and a great play by Dougie Hamilton to what was I going to say here? Oh, sorry. It took just a really nice play by Dougie Hamilton to keep that in the zone, fire that puck on net, and then Bastian gets the goal to make it 3-2. And of course, the Penguins ended up winning the game. But anyways, I'm probably getting a little sidetracked at this point. But, there's just really no need for the doom and gloom stuff. A good team is allowed to play like crap against a bad team and still win. I mean, we've been seeing the Pittsburgh Steelers do this for many years under Mike Tomlin. Sometimes it can happen under Mike Sullivan. I'm just glad the team got the 2 points to continue its 7-game winning streak. They're now only 4 points out of first place. That's why I think it might be getting lost here. They're in a really good position right now with the injuries that we're going to get to that later on in the episode. They're in a really good position right now where they can make a run at the top of the Metropolitan Division starting after the holiday break. Because, again, they're only 4 points out. They're, if I recall correctly, 9 points up on the 9th place team, the Boston Bruins. I know the Bruins have been battling some COVID issues, as has basically most of the league at this point. And the Penguins have been lucky that they haven't had a second outbreak at this point. But, the fact of the matter is they have been baking points, and that's all you can do at this point, especially with the players that they have out right now. So I know it probably wasn't the best effort by the Penguins, but you know what? I'll take a win any day of the week, especially against a team that always plays the Penguins well and the Devils. They will play New Jersey at some point in the near future. For those that were not aware, did not see the announcement, the Penguins-Devils game for Tuesday in Pittsburgh has been postponed. The Devils are dealing with a COVID issue right now. Hopefully, God willing, it does not go to the Penguins. But that game has not been rescheduled as of yet. As soon as I know, I will let you all know, so you guys can figure out your ticket plans and the start time and everything. The Penguins will have one more game before the holiday break, Thursday against the Philadelphia Flyers at PPG Paints Arena. That'll be the final game against Philadelphia in Pittsburgh this year before they also play them twice in Philadelphia later on in the season. But overall, again, my biggest takeaway before we get to the next segment, it's just a strong win. When you don't have your best, sometimes you need, some of your other players to step up when you need them to. That was Tristan Jarry, especially late in the third period, where for some reason they gave up a breakaway with 5 seconds left. I think Chris Letang and Brian Dumoulin's controllers just flat out disconnected there. It was just like I'm playing NHL 17 back in the day, and my batteries just died, and then I get scored on. That's, I think, exactly what happened there. Really nice save by Jarry on Andreas Janssen. If he would have scored there, I believe that would have counted. I think there would have been at least a second or two left on the clock. But did not happen. Penguins get away with 2 points, and they continue their winning streak. So a lot more to get to for this episode, including the play of Danton Heinen with that goal that he scored last night. Also have Teddy Blueger's goal to go into and a couple of other things as well. But before we do that. This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar, Built Bar. It's filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but it's amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat, and high in protein. You get the best of both worlds. It's delicious and it's healthy. So many flavors, you'll have a hard time choosing. Will you get the raspberry or mint brownie, cherry or double chocolate, cookies and cream, or peanut butter brownie? That last one is just really tough for me. I mean, I think it's just, I'd probably lean cookies and cream, but it's really, really close. Because it's a season of peace and love, don't bring up your favorite Built Bar flavor at family parties. People are very passionate about their flavors, and they'll fight you for it, and things could get out of hand. Are you friends with Santa? Well, tell Santa to throw a few Built Bars in those stockings. With so many flavors, they will make anyone's Christmas morning a happy one. Want to cozy up with something warm? Here's a holiday secret. Dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cup of hot chocolate, let it melt a little, and give your beverage a bit of that Built Bar flavor. Plus, you'll have a nice melty Built Bar to go along with it. Be sure to have a couple of napkins on hand as well. You can go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, welcome back to this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow the show's Twitter at LO_Penguins. So, Dan Heinen, he gets his 9th of the season. Jeff, if you're listening to this episode, one more till I get my free cockeye barbecue. If he doesn't score one goal over the next 50 games, hands will be thrown, I think, to say the least. But what a release that was there by Heinen. I mean, John Gillies had no chance to save that, was able to corral that puck beautifully, basically stops on a dime a little bit, picks the corner, bar down, long side. Just you don't teach that in hockey school. And that is just a hell of a release. I love this take I saw from Corey Masick of The Athletic. He covers the New Jersey Devils. He's now saying he thinks at least that this might go down as the best bargain signing from the NHL free agency of this past year. And you know what? You would have a hard time arguing against it with what he has done with the money that he makes for basically not even barely $1 million. 9 goals already in 30 games. He's on pace for well over 20 goals at this point. It's almost like this player that we saw last year in Anaheim is not this year's player, and all he needed was a change of scenery. So a couple of other takes on social media saying, remember when the Bruins tried to run him out of town, which they eventually did because they traded him for Richie. We've seen glimpses of this player, how he's playing this year in Boston, with how he played next to Krejci. He even had spent time with Marchand and Bergeron. This is the Heinen that we are getting this year from what we saw in Boston. And he has just been a delight to watch. And, he eventually actually got elevated to the top line in the third period with Sidney Crosby and Evan Rodriguez. And I hope that Mike Sullivan continues that, going into that next game against Philadelphia, because I really think there could be something there. Kapanen went back to struggling last night. And it's weird, Danny Shirey of DK Pittsburgh Sports had a really interesting take this morning. And it's something that, I also touched on the show last week, because again, the underlying numbers have been really good for Kapanen. And again, Danny says it here, with him on the ice at 5v5 this season, the Penguins have outscored the opposition 15-6, have a 71.4% of the goal share. That's the 8th highest mark in the NHL. Obviously the great goaltending behind him, as Danny notes, his 97% on ice save percentage is first on the Penguins, 6th in the NHL. It helps that the goalie is making all the saves when Kapanen is on the ice, but it's still weird that that's not translating to Kapanen getting more on ice results. I thought coming into this game that he had been playing better, and then it all goes straight south. He had a hard time corralling the puck, I thought, during the game, did not have his legs. His skating was piss poor. There were a couple plays where he kind of just, cost the Penguins zone time because he was just being selfish with the puck, or, Sidney Crosby and him were also off on a couple of passes in the offensive zone in the first couple of periods. And Mike Sullivan just said, you know what? I've had enough. I'm not doing this crap anymore. And he pulled the plug, on that, and he elevated Heinen. And the first line looked pretty good, I thought, with Heinen in the third period. So I'm curious to see what happens with Kapanen for that game on Thursday. Obviously, the impending return of Evgeny Malkin potentially for that game could be, impact with Kapanen. I'm sure they'll just put him down there with Gino if Malkin is ready to play. We'll have more on that coming up later on in the show. But I still want to see more from him. Overall, I thought last night was a really big step back from him. But Teddy Blueger, he's making his case for arguably the best penalty killer in the NHL. Just a great job to come in on a breakaway and completely fool John Gillies. Comes in, does a little mini backhand forehand move, goes right between the wickets. You don't really teach that in hockey school. Gillies had no shot on that. He bit for the fake so hard, and Blueger made him pay. I love the celebration that he had there, and he's been awesome this year. I really have nothing bad to say about Blueger at this point. He's also on pace for 20 plus goals this season. His impact to the team can't be overstated. Great penalty killer, great on even strength, good goal scorer, good playmaker, really good defensively at 5v5. Just the perfect bottom six player that this team needs. And sometimes if this team is really banged up, he can even play top 6 minutes for them if he needs to. Obviously, you don't really want that to happen. He's much better suited for a depth role. But another really great game from Blueger last night overall. Mike Matheson gets the third goal, for the Penguins, and that was just a seeing eye shot. But the biggest one on that play, if you go back and watch it, or if you remember watching it, Sam Lafferty's screen there. John Gillies had no chance to see it because Lafferty probably made the best play of his NHL career by completely shielding him of the puck. Matheson was able to fire it from the point, and usually that's a routine save for the goaltender. But, excuse me, the only reason why it went in was just because he couldn't see it. And again, credit to Sam Lafferty for that screen. That was a really nice job by him to take away all the eyes of Gillies. So I was really impressed by Lafferty just be able to stand in front of them and just take everything away. But, Matheson did take it away. That was a foolish penalty by him on, I'm trying to remember who it was now. It's probably going to come to me as the show goes on. But just a really foolish penalty there. Right after you score the goal, a little over halfway through the third period, it's 3-1. You're playing your best hockey of the night, and then you're asked your PK to go out and try to continue the streak. Obviously, they weren't able to do that, but you're hurting your team in that situation. You've just restored your 2-goal lead. There's no need to make a dangerous cross-checking play like that. I really don't know what Matheson was doing there. Again, just a really piss poor play, and this is the Mike Matheson experience. He does a great play like the one on his goal, a nice seeing eye shot, and then he gives it all away with a really just dumb penalty. So I didn't really understand why Matheson had to do that. I know New Jersey ended up scoring there, but after that, the Devils didn't really have that good of a scoring chance until 5 seconds left when Jari had to bail both Chris Letang and Brian Dumoulin out. Obviously, there is some negative. Just didn't like overall how most of the team played. Sidney Crosby had a bit of an off game. Rodriguez was okay. I think the puck was jumping off his stick a little bit more than normal. I shouldn't even say more than normal. It doesn't usually jump off his stick, but I was noticing that a lot more last night. I thought Letang had a bit of an off game, but overall, that's going to happen sometimes. If you look at his game score overall, it was pretty good. And also, if you are not looking at that, it's the Hockey Stats Cards account on social media. They also have a website as well, hockeystatcards.com. Chris Letang was, if I can look at this right now, all right, well, my eyes are just too bad. He's still up in the positive above zero for last night. Marcus Pettersson actually led everyone with nearly a 3.1 game score. Mike Matheson was right behind him. John Marino was up there. Danton Heinen, Jason Zucker was up there as well. And there's a whole lot of negatives for all of the Devils players. I did see this tweet courtesy of Mad Chad this morning. Chris Letang, out of all the defensemen this season, ranks 8th in average game score. It's ridiculous at this point what he's been able to do for this team. One bad game is not going to change my perception of him from this season. But when Jari needed to make a big save, he was there. He wasn't really tested that much because the Penguins only allowed 19 overall shots for the game. Again, it was a really boring, dull game, just a nice little slog. I guess that's what Lindy Ruff and the Devils like to do against the Penguins. But again, when Jari needed to make a big save, like the one I've said probably 5 times in this episode, at the end of the game, he was there, made that save, and a couple of other big ones as well. throughout the contest. But that'll wrap up this second segment of the Locked On Penguins podcast. Coming up in the next one, might do a little preview against Philadelphia Flyers and also touch on a couple of other things relating to this team and some practice notes, especially as well. Before we do that, though, BetOnline has you covered all season. That means more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues for the march to the playoffs. I cannot believe that we are now – there's only 3 weeks left of the NFL regular season. It's just ridiculous at this point. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. You can head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus for basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC. Right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest, easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. That is BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so we're back here on this episode of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I am, of course, your host, Hunter Hodes. Remember to follow me on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. Follow this show's Twitter at @L_Penguins. So there were some big practice notes today. Excuse me. Evgeny Malkin was back on the ice at practice, but was in a no-contact sweater today. So a little bit of a stack back, but I'm sure this is probably all according to plan. According to Josh Yohe in his article from The Athletic last night, he would not be surprised if Gino does make his return this week. Obviously, there's only one game, so it would have to be against Philadelphia. But he also did say if it's not against the Flyers, you can bet on it being against the Bruins right after the Christmas break. So at this point, it's only a matter of when, not if he's going to return really soon. I'd want to say it's within the next week. He's been practicing with the team for a while. Hopefully, he'll be in full contact tomorrow for practice. There were no line rushes today. The Penguins did announce when the game was postponed, they will be practicing fully tomorrow. Also, Jake Gensel and Brian Rust were on the ice for practice today, both in no-contact sweaters. So the three big guns that have been hurt for the last little bit, especially Gino, they were all practicing with the team today in no contact capacity. Brian Boyle was also on the ice. The only player that was not available was Jason Zucker. He had another maintenance day, so he's definitely been battling a bit of an injury. And, of course, Brian Boyle was also on the ice for practice as well, as he continues to nurse an upper body injury? Yeah, it is. So those are the practice updates there. Again, there were no line rushes. Gino did partake a little bit in some of the power play duties, but otherwise that is really it. Big game on Thursday against the Flyers. They've been playing a bit better hockey lately, but they're still a little ways away from being a playoff team at this point. Coming into this year, I really was not high on Philadelphia, and I'm glad that they've proved me right so far. They only have 44% of the expected goals, 45% of the actual goals, nearly 48% of the shot attempts this season. They have a -10 goal differential, which is horrendous. The only big thing that they've had this year is their goaltending. Carter Hart, for as much as Penguins fans like to bag on him, and I've made my fair share of jokes at his expense just because of how bad he was last year, he's been phenomenal this year. He's had a really nice bounce back for them. The Flyers' overall save percentage this season is .929 for shots on goal. Actually, no, .922. Excuse me, I read that wrong on Money Puck. Most of that has been from Carter Hart. Martin Jones has been okay, but I mean, you're not going to ask him to basically carry the Flyers' goaltending. The Flyers' goals for 2.16, so they have been struggling a little bit to score this season. For reference, the Senators, who are a worse team than Philadelphia, they have a goals for per 60 of 2.34, and they have a better goal. They have a better goals against per 60. Actually, no, they have a worse goals against per 60 than the Flyers, 2.93 compared to 2.58 for Philadelphia. So, I mean, it's been a little bit of a struggle defensively, but more of a struggle offensively. It's just the goals really haven't come from a lot of their depth this season. But again, that said, they have been playing some better hockey overall the last week. It might be too little, too late for them, but it's a rivalry game. These are always highly contested. I'm really excited to see how Pittsburgh plays against Philadelphia. I'm hoping I can do a crossover later this week with the fine folks at Locked On Flyers. We've only ever done one of those. Be interested to hear their perspective on the team this year and what they think they could be doing moving forward, and just how the team has been playing ever since the coaching change was made with Alain Vigneault. I will leave you all with this in terms of some underlying numbers with the Penguins. And, I keep seeing these, from the national media, and people keep saying like why the Penguins confuse people. But as Adam Gretz says, the Penguins are what they look like. This is a really good team. They have some of the best underlying numbers in the league. If you look at Danny Shire's stuff, he put out a great tweet earlier today. If I can just find this yet again, because of course when I'm recording this podcast, I do not have it up in front of me. Via Evolving Hockey, this comes courtesy of Danny. Penguins ranked 5th in goal share at 56.9%. They ranked 2nd in expected goal share at 55.4%. And they ranked 4th in shot attempt share at 53.9%. They are a top 5 team in almost any metric that you look at. And you know what? They again have outstanding depth this year. It's probably just as good, if not better, than last year. And I'll say it for the 1000th time on this podcast, probably a bit more than this point. If this team gets average goaltending in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and if Tristan Jarry can continue to play at the level that he has played at through the first couple of months of the season in the playoffs, there are not many teams that can beat this team in a 7-game series. This is a Stanley Cup contending team if everyone is healthy and if the goaltending is at least average. That's just the reality of the situation. You're seeing it with how they're winning. They're getting they're getting that depth scoring. Some of the stars are starting to step up. Sid's playing a lot better, but they're also getting the goaltending again. The defense is playing awesome. This is the blueprint for how the Penguins can win another Stanley Cup in the Sid and Gino era. And the team is only going to get better when Rust, Gensel, and Gino get back in the lineup, hopefully here in the next week to week and a half. But I wanted to leave you all off with another positive note. I really wanted this show to be mainly positive. I understand, again, that the team didn't really play good, but at the end of the day, that's not been the norm for the last, 2.5, 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. They've had way more good games than bad games. You're going to have stinkers at times, and sometimes you also win them. That's the highs and lows in the NHL season. The sign of a really, really good team is one that doesn't have their best on some nights, but still is able to find a way to win the game, even though it's against a not-so-good team. That's exactly what the Penguins did against New Jersey. But the team will have off a couple more days for their game against Philadelphia on Thursday, assuming that it is not postponed. But that doesn't mean the episodes here stop on the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'll have another episode for you all on Tuesday, tomorrow, for the show. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will talk to you all then.